So I'm going to go back into something you said before. You're going to have a sliding scale on your prices, not your fees. You said the F word again. You do really.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't say fund on this podcast. And
We've got out.
At MBA Chartered Professional Accountants, we have three core beliefs. 1, we believe that business owners are the most important people on the planet. 2, we believe that the traditional accounting firm business model is flawed and fails to serve you. And 3, we believe the MBA way gives you what you truly want and deserve, resources and advice that helps you grow your business and your life. This is the MBA Way podcast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the MBA Way podcast. I'm your host, Eric Solbakken, and today we have Beau Atkins on the podcast. He's a family law lawyer, entrepreneur, and founder of Evolve Family Law. Now, the reason why I'm really excited about this podcast is because Beau and I both agree that the billing by the hour model is bullshit. And we're going to go deep into that one, and we're going to find a little bit more about how Evolve Law is helping families and businesses, or families get through family. Well, Beau, here, you know what? I'm tripping over my fucking words here. Tell people what you do.
Yeah, well, I was, maybe a bit of my backstory would help first. So in 2019, I had founded my first law office in 2015, and we were we were fairly unique in that we were niche in an area in a province where there's not a lot of niche businesses. So we were only doing family law, which really allowed us to zero in on our target market, our target client, and build our services accordingly. So that was a win. But I was still frustrated in 2019 because, as you and I have discussed many times, law firms, accounting firms, medical practices, in most cases, do not operate like a traditional business. They're rooted in tradition, they're stuck in ruts, and they don't follow best business practices. They're really not entrepreneurial. And I was frustrated because at heart, I'm an entrepreneur, and being stuck in a non-entrepreneurial profession like law was frustrating to me. I was ready to throw it all into the wind and start something else, and I know you can relate to that.
Oh, here's the question. What would you have done if you hadn't gone the law route?
Oh, I was actually in serious discussions with a major rotisserie chicken franchise from Mexico that I was going to bring up to Canada. Now what was I had a connection. I loved the chicken. I loved the product. No background in that whatsoever. Complete diversion. I would not have been living my purpose or doing anything like that. So I'm glad I eventually steered my way back. But that was very close to coming to fruition.
Dude, I had the guitar on my back and I was heading to Nashville. I was going to go do the music career. That's where it was, either LA. Actually, it would have more been like LA versus Nashville at the time. But yeah, I was going to get out. But so anyways, you didn't go the chicken route. No, going law. So let's keep going there.
You know, I was inspired. It's funny the things that I feel entrepreneurs can be inspired by. But I was in San Diego at the time, and I toured. They've got a museum called the USS Midway. It's a decommissioned naval aircraft carrier. And I was looking at it, and I'm just amazed. I'm like, if man could build this city on the ocean and do all this amazing things, surely I can find a way to make a law business work. And I decided I'm going to give it one more shot. I had law partners, so I had to sort of move out of that because it was too difficult to steer a ship where I felt there was some resistance, because what I was doing was, by almost any measure, would have been considered crazy. I'm essentially, my goal was to tear it down, not model myself after any other law office, and model myself after the best run businesses, and model myself after the best entrepreneurs. So finding things like the Entrepreneur's Operating System, EOS, based on Gino Wickman's book Traction, and Strategic Coach, which is where you and I met, and Entrepreneurs Organization, just surrounding myself with all these people really helped me. It provided the catalyst I needed to build the next thing. And so what the first step, when I scaled it all back, I figured, okay, what am I actually selling? What are any of us selling in professional services? Why are people coming to me? Because I can sure as hell tell you they're not coming to buy an hour of my time. They don't give a shit about an hour of my time. But what I think you could say all people seeking legal services are trying to get is some degree of certainty or peace of mind. So once I realized that's what I'm selling, I had sort of this epiphany that by selling my time, and by lawyers selling their time, and by accountants, same thing. Your clients are looking for certainty and some direction in terms of their tax planning or other things. By selling time, lawyers were failing to provide that certainty or peace of mind at their very first opportunity. Clients in the door. How much is it going to cost? I don't know. However many hours it takes at this rate. And so I realized the hourly rate had to die. And so since 2020, May 2020, we've got 5 attorneys now who have never billed for a second of their time. So they've never charged an hourly rate. We've never charged an hourly rate inside of our office. And it's been liberating. For one, we're not tethered to that finite, scarce resource of time. And we can be a lot more, it's a lot easier to scale. It's a lot easier to build. And it's a best business practice. So that was sort of the unique thing that we brought. And that became our guarantee that our clients will never pay or receive an unexpected bill.
Which is the basis of the accountant success formula, which is what MBA has been built upon, which is, shall we call it the original, the original value pricers in the world, Ron Baker and Paul Dunn from Firm of the Future. That was the book that changed my world as I read that book. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, I'm going to change this model. And that was over 10, well, geez, no, now I'm talking even, that was 17 years ago now when I started that. I started changing the model 17 years ago with my second accounting practice. And I was like, this has got to change. And all the things that you just said, it's like people buy good feelings. They want peace of mind. They want certainty. So, for example, I'm going in and I'm going to see a lawyer today, actually, or tomorrow morning, I'm actually going to see the lawyer. Yay, happy joy. I want certainty. I want peace of mind. The reason why I'm going to the lawyer is like, I need you to help me get out of this situation. I want some peace of mind. I want to know you're taking care of it. But I'm going to be like, how much is it going to cost? And he's going to be like, well, it depends on how long we take. And I'm going to be pushing him. I'm going to be pushing him for a price. You watch it. I'm going to dig in. I'm going to really be a pain in his ass. I know that because I know my business owners, when they come in to see us, they want to know what the price is ahead of time. That's part of the peace of mind, is knowing here's the price and here's the value. So the price and the value have to align. And the fact that you're the first lawyer I've talked to that has actually embraced that. And like, I was like, holy crap. But that's of course because you're an entrepreneur stuck in a lawyer's body, just like I'm an entrepreneur stuck in an accountant's body. Doesn't mean that we have to follow the old rote ways of doing things. But you're the first lawyer I've ever met to ever do this.
Well, and I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. So if you're selling certainty or peace of mind, I think once you come to that realization, you discover that different clients want different degrees of certainty. Most lawyers, you'll rarely find a lawyer who says this is a guarantee. It's absolutely, because there are some unpredictability to the law. There's someone, I mean, especially you have no idea. Some accounting rules might change and all these other things. So you can offer degrees of certainty. So once you realize not only are you selling peace of mind or certainty, but you're quantifying how much peace of mind or certainty. And it's somewhere between 0 and let's call it 99%, leaving 1% margin of error. The problem is when lawyers or accountants aren't identifying that that's what they're selling, they're all aiming for the highest degree of certainty when that might not even be what the end customer wants. When I price it out, just like I'm sure when accountants price it out. You can say, look, if you want me to go through all of this stuff and make sure, so let's talk about matrimonial property division, dividing property between spouses. You want to make sure that this is exactly 50-50. You get 50%, the other person gets 50%. I can put a price tag on that. It's going to be high, but you have that choice. If you're comfortable with a 40-60 split, it's going to be much lower because I'm not turning over every single stone. But I've quantified that. And so the clients are in the driver's seat once you give them that control, those options.
Right. And it all becomes, for me, it's return on investment. And for every business owner, it's return on investment. What am I getting? What am I paying for? What am I getting?
Absolutely.
What you pay, the value is what you receive, right?
And that's a problem with that hourly rate, is it removes the customer's ability to do a cost-benefit analysis because the lawyer hasn't even done that. There's no risk for the lawyer not to do that because they're just going to charge by the hour, or at least there's no perceived risk. But I'm sure, like you, your experience in accounting, lawyers write off so much of their time, and the amount that lawyers actually spend working, actually bill, and actually collect it just continues to decline. They write off their fees. They can't justify charging what they end up charging. They go down rabbit holes and they end up losing, not realizing it because they think the risk is on the client.
Well, we could get into a whole conversation. And, the book, that the Accountant Success Formula book, I have the 7 sins of the billable hour, right? One of them is the 7th sin is spending time tracking time, right? And this whole fictitious thing with lawyers and accountants, and most of the business owners listening to us, they're like, we don't give a shit. We don't understand this, but lawyers and accountants, we get it. We rack up all this internal work in progress, and then we try and justify billing it all to the client when the client had never had a decision beforehand. It's like and the reason why the accountant and the lawyers, they have so much stress and anxiety is because we never agreed to it ahead of time. If you had agreed to it ahead of time, why would you even bother tracking anything? It doesn't really matter. Here's another thing. I was talking to someone at a Christmas party the other night. I wanted to share this with you. As I said, if I'm billing you by the hour, you are taking the risk away you're going into business with me, taking away my risk on my profit model. And the person looked at me and they went, what? And I said, you are now a partner with me, making sure that my business model stays profitable. So accountants and lawyers are lazy business owners. They're lazy entrepreneurs because the billable hour is tied to how many hours they have to pay someone else. And there's a profit margin in there. And if you're constantly doing that as the consumer, you are bearing the brunt of my inability to create a profitable model. So it's directly tied in there. And I said, what if instead you had a price and a decision, and then it's up to me to decide whether my model's profitable? But you're going into business with the accountant or the lawyer when you're paying them by the hour. And she was like, holy crap, you're right. And I went, yeah, I know. It's pretty brutal, isn't it? Apparently we're supposed to be your professional. We're supposed to be looking after you, and we're actually entrapping you into our profitability.
Well, and there's an inherent conflict of interest in that model too, because of course, the more I steer you down the route that's going to take longer, I can't remember who I heard say this. It might have been you talking about if you're talking about an Uber driver who's getting paid by the hour, they will find the longest route to the airport.
Yes.
I don't want to say that they're doing it necessarily maliciously, but at some point as a business owner, your goal to keep the lights on and to keep everything running is to bring in profit, bring in revenue, so that you can grow. And when you're tethered to something like the hourly rate, that's at direct conflict with what customers are paying you for.
Yeah. So the thing that I like to call it is, I'm, as an owner of an accounting firm, trying to maximize my profitability. You, as a consumer of my services, are trying to maximize the profitability of your world, which means you want to know how much things are costing and how much revenue. So you have revenue minus expenses. That's it. Your expenses then become my driver. I want to increase profit, but you want to decrease expenses. We're naturally in a conflict of interest because you want to keep the prices low and I want to keep the prices high. And so I can do that by just spending more time. But then accountants and lawyers go, that's not ethical. We wouldn't charge people for more time than we actually do. And I'm like, but you are naturally in a conflict of interest. It's just naturally there, whether or not you act upon it. And I think that's why so many accountants and lawyers have so much internal angst and anxiety, and why there's so much stress inside those two professions. I think we could go down a rabbit hole on this one.
I think so. And I'm not accusing anyone of intentionally doing it. I'm just saying that bias exists, that conflict exists.
Yeah.
And you'd hope that lawyers and accountants aren't doing that. But again, it's a conflict of interest. And if best business practice, just remove the conflict of interest. Simple as that.
So you had an aha moment that you were actually more of an entrepreneur and you were stuck inside a bureaucratic organization. I've mentioned this before on podcasts where I said, I truly believe the reason why the accounting profession and the legal profession is so stifled and frustrated is because we're trained, monitored, and disciplined by a bureaucratic organization. And bureaucratic organizations are all about control. Entrepreneurial organizations are all about creating value. So for you and me, it was frustrating to try and create value inside a bureaucratic organization because they keep trying to control us. So breaking free from the notion that you have to bill by the hour was one of that first kind of breakthroughs in thinking. What other breakthroughs have you had in terms of the model? Because we're just talking about the billing model, but you said you changed your environment. You started joining EO. You started joining, strategic coach. Like what else? What other ahas did you have inside the?
Well, the deeper I got and the more I built systems and things like that, and realized there were better ways of doing things, the more I realized I needed to bring other people in. I needed, as Dan Sullivan talks about, the unique ability. I needed to live more in my unique ability and delegate more things. Because again, I think I use the image of a witch's cauldron for the hourly rate, because nobody knows what's in it. Why does one lawyer set their hourly rate at 500? Why is another at 300? Well, take a pinch of the demographic, the economy where you live. So New York City is going to be more expensive than Saskatchewan. Take experience, a dash of experience. Take all of these different things that go into it, and you can't actually articulate. It's intangible what actually goes into that. And so I realized I needed to be what we charge needed to make sense. There had to be some justification for it. And the lawyers in my office needed to be serving their function and not minimally doing all of the work that could be delegated to somebody that we could either pay less or do more efficiently or enjoyed the work. That's a big thing. I think you've got a lot of people who are in the professions who don't actually enjoy their work because they're taking on so many tasks that they don't like doing and they're not good at. That was one thing I realized was I identified 19 different functions a solo practitioner serves inside of their business. I identified that I was probably incompetent at least 5 or 6 of those things. Collections. I sucked at getting collections in. I needed a who could sit in that. I needed either a who or a process or something to solve that for me. Otherwise, it was like a opening a window in the middle of February. And so that was a big unlock for me. Some of the other unlocks, I mean, the stuff with getting more efficient as you build processes and you build your system, you get the right people in the right seats. You just build all these efficiencies. So as you're getting more and more efficient, technology, I in 2019, 2020, when I was starting this, AI was barely a blip on my screen. But as it's come to the forefront, I've realized, wow, I can do so much so much more with so much less time and so much less effort. And it's really allowed me to sort of increase margins and serve my clients better. That's something I hadn't anticipated. But I think once you unlock one door, others start opening, flying open. Another really cool thing that we've done is we offer payment plans. When you have fixed fees and are selling things as if they're products off a shelf, it becomes so much easier to say, okay, I can take payments on this because it's a defined cost. This thing costs $10,000. Pay me $2,500 upfront, the rest over a year. Here's what your monthly payments are. Again, I'm delivering certainty. I'm making sure I get paid so that I can keep the lights on, keep my employees happy. And it's really creating win-win-win scenarios.
Right. I mentioned I've yet to see another law firm doing this. Have you run into any other law firms that are actually value pricing and giving clients like set investment?
Unfortunately not. I think there's so much opportunity, and I would not view anybody starting this as competition because the legal market is wide open. You've got a record number of people representing themselves because access to justice it's so expensive to go out and hire your traditional lawyer. So there are a lot of options out there. So I continue to say, until I'm corrected by somebody, that we're the only law office I'm aware of in the world that offers nothing but value pricing or value-based pricing. I've stopped saying flat fee billing. I need to take, after our discussion, I need to work that into our system and finesse it a little bit. But I'm unaware of anybody else providing a similar model and offering payment plans.
Yeah, Beau and I had the conversation when we were in Toronto last at Strategic Coach, and we were having lunch and we were chatting, and this when we decided to do the podcast. And he was talking about fees, and I said, stop using the F word, man. And he was like, what? I said, stop using the F word. Fee is an F word, right? Fee is something you pay when you bring your book in late to the library, or it's a fine or a fee that you get for parking your car on the street. I said, you want to change the verbiage to price. As a business owner, you're always looking at return on investment, right? Here's the price you pay, here's the value you receive. So everything we talk about is here's our price for our services. Here's the investment that you will make for our services. So it's always focused on the positive. Here's what I invest, here's what I get, right? And I love the fact that you've created peace of mind. You're selling certainty or peace of mind for your clients and saying, you want this much peace of mind, here's what the price is, and then they can make that decision, right? That is the most important thing, is to give the client the opportunity to say, yes, this is worth the investment.
Right.
This is worth the investment. I'm willing to take this risk to do this. Let's go for it, right? I remember when I was in public practice doing client work directly, and I would always sit down and ask them, I said, okay, how aggressive do you want to be with your tax write-offs? And they would say, well, why? I said, because I'll tell you where the shades of gray are. Right. It was actually going to be one of the advertising or marketing plans that I was going to call it. We play in the gray. But then I thought that's not a good idea to put out for an accounting firm, because then CRA will be all over our ass, right? They're just targeting this accounting firm going, we play in the gray. Let's go get them, right? But ultimately, it's a gray area because life is full of uncertainty. People come to us for certainty. So I can say, well, I can tell you right now that if you write this off, it's 100% on side. I can also tell you that the farther you go, it gets darker and darker shades of gray until it finally crosses a line, and then this is black side. If you go here, it's 100% offside, right? Anything in between there, it's like, okay, there's some precedent in place. You could maybe take it to this court. You could take it to the appeals court. You could take it to Supreme Court. But you got to be ready for the cost of going that far if that's what you want to do. And then, of course, we're going to be hiring tax lawyers to help you. But it's totally up to you. The client then is empowered, given all the information, to make a decision on how much risk they want to take for the reward, right? And part of the risk is the investment for the outcome. And I would imagine, especially in family law, there's so many variables in there. Like no one, for the life of me, like you never know if you end up taking it to court, you never know what the judge is going to decide, like what they're feeling that day, right?
Well, and that's just it. I think you hit it right on the head. When you look at other industries, so investment advisors would be a good example. When you're investing, they ask you, what's your risk profile? What's your risk assessment? How risky do you want me to be with your investment? So they're very transparent about that, at least at that part of the business where they'll put you in a certain category. They'll have that upfront discussion. They're not just going to put all your investment in a high risk vehicle without you checking a box and confirming that's what you want. And I think that's what this model of billing and the business model that you and I are creating allows. It's like how far, and you also brought up a good point, verbiage. Like when we're thinking about all this other stuff, we also start thinking about how are we talking to our clients? How are our words impacting the way that they feel? I think that's another unlock that you'll get when you're thinking like an entrepreneur inside these businesses. How can I use my words so that my customers feel more secure? If I tell them, we can do this, but here are the risks, here's the paths that could happen. Now I'm putting the control in their hands. It's a choose your own adventure for them.
Exactly. And giving people, when you think of tax, accounting, and law, it's this scary black hole for most business owners. So like, I have no idea what to do for my taxes. I have no idea how the law works. And it's this scary black hole. The more we can give certainty to the business owner or the client and say, here's where the risks are. Here's where the risks are. And then they turn and look at me and go, well, Eric, what would you do if it was you? I always love that question because they'll ask me, well, what would you do if it was you? And every time I work with any of my team members, I'm always like, turn this question around and make it as if it's yours. What would you do if this was your life and your business? What would you advise yourself? And turn it around, make it personal. As soon as you make it personal, you're like, oh crap, yeah, I wouldn't take that risk. Or yes, I would push it here because I know that if it does go wrong, here's the potential downside. And that's, the big thing is by giving people that clear picture of, you do it this way, here's the benefits, but here's the risks of it going sideways or going down, and then what is the actual downside? And so one of the greatest books that business books I think ever written was The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. It's brilliant. And he always says, he asks this one question, he goes, what's the upside? What's the downside? Can I live with the downside? Right? And so if you just ask yourself those three questions when you're in business, it's like, what's the upside? What's the downside? Can I live with the downside? And then the question becomes, well, do I have a clear picture of what the downside really is? And can I live with it? You have to figure out what it is first before you can answer the last question. So you need to have a clear picture of what the upside is, what the downside is, and then you can make a decision if you're willing to live with the downside.
Well, and I think that's just it. It's all about transparency. The more transparent you are with the level of risk that you're taking a client down, the more they can make a decision. That was probably the biggest thing I was struggling with in 2019 when I'm like, my lawyer side versus my entrepreneur side. Well, the lawyer side doesn't want to take any risk. The entrepreneur side wants to seize every opportunity. And existing in those two spaces will drive you insane. And once I recognized I needed to separate the two. So, I feel like I've done a fairly good job. I'm minimally practicing as an attorney and mostly working on scaling the business. So we've scaled, so we now provide services across Canada, and building it out as a business. So I'm existing less as an attorney inside of my practice. And that allows me to see so many more opportunities. Now I go back to my legal team and I say, hey, I've got this wicked idea. I want to try this. I've got lawyers in my office their risk flags go up. And sometimes they're valid risk flags. The entrepreneurs get in trouble because we see opportunity and sometimes we're blind to the risk. But I think at the same token, accountants and lawyers are often blind to the opportunities, and all they see is the risks. They just flag these risks. You would never ask business advice from your attorney. They would say, don't do it. It's too risky. You don't want them there. You want them maybe on the compliance side of things to make sure you don't step in hot water or too far into the gray area or outside of it. But you don't want them making every decision, because you'll run a paralyzed business.
Yeah, you'd never get any business done if you constantly relied upon your lawyer and your accountant. They were like, "Oh, don't do it; it's too scary," right? Which is the most fucked up thing in the world, because accountants and lawyers are in business, so they're entrepreneurs, but yet they're the most risk-averse people in the world. So it's like the business owner needs to use the accountant and the lawyer to help ground them in it, but not drive it. But then how does the accountant and lawyer actually become somebody you trust to actually give you advice on a business if they're not running it like an entrepreneur?
Well,
Right, there's that balance in there, right? And that cognitive dissonance, that's what you were talking about. There's cognitive dissonance, is holding two opposing thoughts in your head at the same time. It causes psychosis, is what it does.
Right. Well, and I had a huge benefit when I founded my Evolve Law. I co-founded it with my brother, who isn't a lawyer, and he comes from. If we're looking at the visionary integrator, he's an integrator. And another really good business book that helped me was E-Myth by Michael Gerber, talking about have one person in all these seats. So draw out all the roles, all of these different responsibilities, one person in those. And it was when we were, the benefit of working with your brother is you can scream and swear at one another and still end up at Mom's for Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, and it's all good. And I mean, we pushed each other, short of throwing fists. We were at each other at some of these meetings. And I remember one in particular, we're in the marketing meeting because we're running L10s, level 10 meetings, as EOS has you do. And he's yelling at me. He's like, "We don't need a fucking lawyer in this room right now. Take off your lawyer hat or get out." And after I brushed my bruised ego, I realized how right he was about that. I was suffocating. I was taking all the air out of that room because I couldn't take off my lawyer hat. And when I realized, okay, if I'm going to be in this room and in a seat inside the marketing team, I need to either take off my lawyer hat or I need to not go in that room. And that was another huge epiphany that I had through the process.
I think for the listener out there, when you're thinking of your own business, where are you potentially having cognitive dissonance in your head, and where are you playing two roles, trying to wear two hats at the same time? And for most business owners, especially when we start, you're the rugged individualist. You're building, you're doing everything yourself, and so you're thinking, I have to do it. I'm the only one who can do it as well as I can. Well, that's true, but you can't grow if you don't start delegating these things off and actually having dissenting voices in the room, or people that are going to challenge your thinking. Right. And this is that open and honest communications where, being tunnel visioned isn't going to help. And I find accountants and lawyers are very tunnel visioned when it comes. It's all about risk and being conservative, and just don't take any chances. Like, this is the way it has to be. Like in the accounting world, it's like, don't be associated with anything false or misleading. Otherwise you will burn in hell. It's like, oh my gosh, my client wants to take a shot at writing this thing off because it's on the dark gray side. Go for it, right? Like, let him know, tell him about it. Don't hold them back from your own individual holdups. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think this is where I've learned very much is, like, as a professional, your job is to articulate to the client exactly all the risks, the upsides and the downsides of a decision-making process. Give them all of the information you possibly can, and then let them decide. Let them make the decision, because it's their life. They get to choose. But your job is to bring them all the information, simplify it down as much as you possibly can so that they can make an informed decision. And that actually is a creative process, I found. For me, like, taking this complex world of tax and estate and probate fees and law, all these different things, and try and simplify it down so the client can make a decision. That's what I love about what you're doing too, is you're simplifying things down, giving the client a decision to go, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to go forward on this.
Well, yeah. And I was just reading a book. It's called The Legal Singularity. And it's talking a lot about some of the challenges lawyers are facing in the legal profession generally in giving scalable or accessible services. And a big part of it is legal literacy, not being able to actually provide things in a way that clients understand, and accountants will have that too. I don't have accountant literacy. That's probably one of the areas of my business where I'm most invested, because I'm not the right person to be. I will cause my anxiety will be contagious, and I will cause anxiety in my accounting meetings if I'm there. So I need to empower a team, and magic things happen when you empower a team. For one, they have so much confidence. They enjoy their job because I'm not, again, suffocating them by being somewhere I don't deserve to be. I'm not competent to be in that room. And so then when it comes to making the major decisions as a business owner, of course, I'm brought in, and they can disseminate the information in a way that I understand and I can process. That helps me on that side. But the more you do that throughout your organization, the stronger you're going to be overall.
So can you tell me where you are currently operating out of? And if anybody listening here needs, family law advice, which it's more and more prevalent all the time. I remember when I was a kid growing up, there was maybe 1 or 2 kids in my class that had parents that were separated. Now it's like a norm. I don't know what the percentage is now, but it's happening more and more. So this is obviously a supply and demand issue. There's lots of demand for the services. Where can they find you, and where are you operating out of?
So right now, our brick and mortar business is based out of Saskatoon, but we operate coast to coast from BC to the Maritimes, except for Quebec and the territories. Right now, we're operating on our mobility agreement, which allows lawyers from any of the provinces to operate on a limited basis in other provinces. So we also offer limited services. So that includes things like reviewing files, giving consultations, providing basic advice, drafting documents, negotiating, things that don't necessarily require boots on the ground, because boots on the ground isn't scalable. My big, hairy, ambitious goal for this office is to deliver legal services in a way similar to how TurboTax or H&R Block deliver accounting services. Because not everybody, you and I might not be able to go to those services, a Liberty Tax or an H&R Block, but our employees usually can. And there's a lot more people in those situations, salaried employees without complex situations, that just need that access, that just need that information. And we're funneling them all to one source that everybody goes to, dealing with complex situations. And so that's my goal, is to be able to, first Saskatchewan, that's where we sort of incubated, expanded to Canada. I want to expand to North America and eventually the world. But right now it's just Canada.
So you're looking at democratizing family law.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited. We're almost ready to roll this out. We've created our own, almost a legal aid platform, so that we can have a sliding scale for our fees depending on affordable income level of customers who come in, because that's a huge problem too. Legal aid is bursting at the seams everywhere, bordering on institutions collapsing, because there's so much demand and there's so few resources going in. So I think it's a solution that the private sector can respond to, but it has to be done from an entrepreneur's mind. It will never be solved with a lawyer's mind.
Exactly. And that's where you get to no longer have cognitive dissonance. You can step into your unique ability and be that entrepreneur, which you are, right? Which is why you and I resonated so well with it when we started talking to each other. Holy crap, someone who understands me from an
Oh man, when you talk in that room, I was just like taking notes furiously, and I'm like, I gotta connect with him because we're like, yeah. I mean, you're ahead of me, and so I'm just learning and absorbing as much as I can from this stuff, because I think that's the other unlock is when you're entrepreneurial, you're not bound to one industry. You're looking for examples everywhere. You're reading about Steve Jobs. You're reading about Starbucks. You're reading about all of these different platforms and industries to figure out how you can make your own better. And that has just been, it's been huge.
So I'm going to go back into something you said before. You're going to have a sliding scale on your prices, not your fees. You said the F word again. You do. Really?
Oh no.
Yeah. We don't say fuck on this podcast, and we don't But you're going to do it though, and I can tell, because again, I like being around entrepreneurs who are excited about building something better for the future. It's always a bigger, better future for our customers and clients, and seeing a flaw in the model which holds people back that's what drives me nuts. And so, that's why I started the Accountant Success Formula. That's why MBA adopted the model. That's why we're bringing MBA out to Canada. That's why I love Evolve Law. I'm a big proponent. I'm going to be singing your praises and promoting people to come and talk to you like right away. So anybody with a family law issue, please reach out. It's evolvelaw.ca, or is it .com?
.ca.
It's okay, evolvelaw.ca. And again, if you have any family law issues and you are frustrated with the lawyer you're dealing with right now, please connect with Beau, because I was telling you just before we got onto the podcast that we had a Christmas party recently, and I was talking to one of our consultants. His girlfriend was there, and she was going through this whole thing with her family law issue. She was so frustrated getting all these bills. She goes, I can't afford this. This is crazy. She goes, I don't even, and they get angry with me when I don't respond to them, but I don't want to respond to them because then they're going to spend more time on it and they're going to give me another bill that I can't afford. And then I started explaining the Accountant Success Formula model, like how we give price, complete price transparency and what we're going to do and all the rest of it. And I said, and by the way, my buddy Beau, who I just met, does this with Evolve Law. And she was like, no, give me the email, give me his contact information. I'm like, yeah, here it is. Go get it, go talk to him, because, and business owners and consumers understand what you and I are talking about. When you and I talk to the accounting profession and the legal profession, they just stare at us like we're crazy. And that's the part that I don't quite get. Like, they really don't see it, but the consumer gets it. They understand it completely.
Well, and I appreciate the referral. But another thing that a thing that really fuels my passion is, I don't know if you've ever had everybody's had a friend or family member or employee who's gone through it. For one, if you've got an employee who's going through a separation or divorce or custody things, they are probably your worst employee. They're a shell of the employee that they normally are. Most people going through this are really struggling, and that's the value I get out of it, is I'm helping people through that struggle. I'm helping them see through to the other side. And again, I think that's one of the models. I want to help as many people as possible just get through this. And even more one-off than that, I found my personal passion is helping their kids so that their kids don't suffer in this process. Because a lot of times they're the unintended casualties of this adult conflict. Yeah.
And I, for our business owner listeners out there, think about this as, supporting your team members, your staff. If they're going through a separation, which if you have a big enough staff, you will have people going through separations. I have a separation t-shirt myself. I went through it. I've got 2 kids from a previous marriage, and going through that process was not fun whatsoever. It was stressful. I wasn't very good at the business that I was dealing with at the time. If you're a business owner, you have that team, think about that support. If there's a mechanism by which, as an employer, you can get your staff access to legal advice that's going to help them be more have more peace of mind. And it's in a model that is not going to be open-ended, because I could see as an employer, you're like, I can't pay for your legal on this because I don't know where the end is. The employer couldn't say, here's the investment I'll make on my employee to give them peace of mind, because if it's an open-ended bill flower market model, I'm not going to do that. So again, if you're a business owner out there and you have team members that are having this problem, consider reaching out, having a conversation with Beau and seeing if there's some sort of connection you can make on that level where you can support the entrepreneurs to support their staff members. And I'm assuming that's already in your funnel, in your concept of building this out.
Totally. And in fact, I'd go one further. I'll talk to my marketing team after Christmas. They're off now, but if they mention the promo code, the Viking, well, free consult just for a conversation to see how things are going.
There you go. That's what I love to bring, is more resources here. So there you go. If you bring promo code The Viking, you'll get a free consultation with Evolve Law and Beau. Dude, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We've got a lot more in the funnel. I can tell you and I, this is just the beginning, right? Entrepreneurs, we're all building more. So you and I got a lot more things to do in the future.
Totally. Definitely.
All right, man. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.
If you're a business owner or CPA who believes the accounting profession has let you down, then please reach out to us at www.mbacpa.ca so we can have a chat to see if we're a fit to work together. We're always looking forward to talking to you. See you next time.